They thought the rain in the Circle City would damp the energy, but they underestimated what happens when the royal blue takes over the arena. This wasn't just another Tuesday night matchup on the calendar. The Indiana Fever walked onto their home floor riding a 3-game winning streak, looking to prove their early season momentum wasn't a fluke. They were facing a relentless, fast-paced Toronto tempo squad that refused to let the hostile crowd dictate the terms of engagement. What unfolded over the next 4 quarters wasn't just a basketball game, but an absolute clinic in tactical adjustments, raw resilience, and star power operating under immense pressure. And the wildest part of this whole story goes way deeper than anyone realizes. You see, everyone wanted to talk about the marquee names and the highlight reels, but the actual battle was won in the unglamorous mud of the paint and the half-court grind. From the opening tip, Toronto showed they weren't intimidated by the noise or the hype surrounding Indiana. They used the shot clock beautifully, moving the ball with precision to exploit early defensive rotations. When a team attacks the paint with the level of aggression Toronto brought early on, it forces the defense to make a choice. Indiana had to decide whether to protect the rim or guard the perimeter, and that hesitation allowed Toronto to strike first, converting tough inside layups and drawing early contact. Remember this detail, because how Indiana responded to that early interior pressure becomes absolutely crucial later in the game. But that was just the surface of what was happening here under the stadium lights. The Fever needed a stabilizing force to weather the early storm, and they found it in Aliyah Boston. When Caitlin Clark's deep 3-point attempts wouldn't drop early in the contest, Boston took over the interior with absolute authority. She didn't just fight for rebounds, she anchored the entire half-court offense with an elite level of poise and calmness down low. Even when her initial shots didn't fall, her relentless energy allowed her to follow her own misses, drawing whistle after whistle. When Toronto brought the double team, Boston simply outpositioned them, utilizing a quick, unstoppable hook shot that completely shifted the momentum and got the Fever on the scoreboard when they needed it most. And this is where the story takes a turn nobody expected. As the game transformed into a high-stakes chess match between 2 completely different basketball philosophies, Toronto began leaning heavily on their international flavor, showcasing a roster packed with versatile global talent that can stretch the floor. Just as Indiana started to clog the paint, Toronto countered by kicking the ball out to the corners. Suddenly, the script flipped. Back-to-back triples from the outside gave Toronto the lead, proving they could score from anywhere on the floor. It forces you to wonder how a defense is supposed to adjust when a team can hurt you equally from the low post and the 3-point line. Now here's the part that should make you angry if you appreciate pure defensive execution, because the physical toll of this matchup began to alter the entire rotation strategy. While Toronto was finding their rhythm from deep, Indiana's defensive intensity skyrocketed to a level that completely disrupted the passing lanes. We witnessed a defensive sequence where a crucial block inside completely took the wind out of Toronto's sails. The Fever started turning defensive stops into immediate offensive transition opportunities. Caitlin Clark, despite struggling with her signature long-range shooting early on, began tearing the defense apart with a low crossover and a dazzling behind-the-back handle that left defenders frozen. She was pushing the pace, driving the lane, and using her gravity to create open looks for her teammates. And this is where it gets personal for anyone who thinks basketball is just about individual scoring statistics. When one of Toronto's key players went out with her 4th personal foul, the depth of both benches was put to the ultimate test. It became a question of role players knowing their assignments and executing under pressure. Marina Mabrey stepped up in a massive way for Indiana, hitting a critical mid-range jumper and a deep 3 that sent the crowd into an absolute frenzy. The Fever capitalized on a devastating 9-2 run over a crucial 90-second stretch, turning forced turnovers into easy transition points. Every single time Toronto tried to mount a comeback, Indiana had an immediate answer, whether it was a sidestep 3-pointer or a baseline drive that beat the buzzer. Because here's what this all means going forward when you look at the macro level of this league. True greatness isn't defined by a single player having a perfect shooting night. It is defined by a star-driven team finding a way to win when their primary weapon is being heavily targeted by the opposing game plan. Caitlin Clark didn't need to score 30 points tonight to completely dominate the outcome of this basketball game. Instead, she put on a masterclass in playmaking, carving up the Toronto defense to distribute a spectacular season-high 13 assists. She controlled the entire tempo of the 4th quarter, drawing the defense toward her and delivering crisp cross-court passes that set up her shooters in perfect rhythm. Imagine if your entire defensive strategy is built around stopping one specific player, only to watch that player completely reinvent themselves as an elite facilitator on the fly. That is exactly what Toronto had to deal with as the minutes ticked away. When the defense collapsed on Clark, she found Aliyah Boston under the basket for easy layups. When they stayed home on Boston, the ball found its way to Kelsey Mitchell and Sophie Cunningham, who both knocked down clutch perimeter shots with defenders right in their faces. It was a beautiful balanced attack that showed the terrifying ceiling of this Indiana roster when everyone is clicking. Toronto fought valiantly, getting tough bucket and foul conversions late in the game, but the sheer depth and relentless pace of the Fever was simply too much to overcome. When the final buzzer sounded, sealing a commanding 91-74 victory for the Indiana Fever, the embrace at midcourt between the two head coaches told the entire story. This was a hard-fought, grueling battle that validated Indiana's fourth consecutive win. While the headlines tomorrow will undoubtedly focus on the individual double-doubles from Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, the real blueprint for this victory was laid by the collective grit of the entire roster and the spectacular leadership of Kelsey Mitchell. They didn't just win a game on a rainy Tuesday night, they sent a clear, undeniable message to the rest of the league that they can win ugly, they can win fast, and they can adapt to any style of play thrown at them. The question now isn't whether this young core is ready to compete, but rather how high their ceiling actually is if they keep playing with this level of chemistry. Are we watching the definitive turning point of their entire season, or can the rest of the league find a way to stop this offensive juggernaut before it is too late?